The Michael Berry Show.
When I decided I was going to run for city council, I went and spoke to every living city councilman who had previously served. Gracie Sines, Jim Westmoreland, you name it. Every controller I could find. George Grinius, you name it. I had multiple meetings, very productive, very fruitful with Bob Lanier. And he loved the fact that I would look at the spreadsheets with him and that I had studied other cities. And he had hired Bob Moses, who was famous for the parkways through Dallas. He had hired Robert Caro, who wrote the biography of Bob Moses, and flew him down, and he stayed at his home for quite some time to explain to him what Moses had done. Bob Lanier was serious about the job of being mayor and improving the city. So when I decided I was going to run, I met with every one of them. I met with the finance people, but I needed to understand the engineering of a city, which is a big deal. And so there were several names given out to me, and the one that popped up the most was an absolute legend named Bob Jones. And we developed, in the course of his tutelage of me, we developed a friendship that lasts to this day. And he has just, there is an update in a lawsuit. Bob Jones is one of these guys that cares about things that you and I don't. Thank God for it. He cares passionately about whether when it rains, the water drains off or rises. And the truth is, it's not just how much rain falls that determines such things and can damage your home and ruin your investments. It's the city's infrastructure. And there is a development in a case that he has been pursuing. Bob Jones is our guest. Welcome, sir.
Well, thank you, Michael. That's a pretty nice tribute. I appreciate it.
Do you doubt for a moment my sincerity, Bob?
I've never doubted your sincerity, Michael.
Have I not said the same thing to you off air? There is an update in the Houston Chronicle. Mayor John Whitmire and plaintiffs in Houston's drainage lawsuit have reached a deal on how the city will fund future street and drainage projects. Tell me why you brought that suit. Explain to folks who are not, I don't know, how many years you've been an engineer, 40 years, who are not engineers, why this matters and what the city was doing wrong.
Well, start with I've been in Houston practicing engineering for 54 years. The suit comes out of an activity that got a change to the city charter. Started in about 2010. Case was thrown out. There was a new election in 2018. The previous administration was diverting money that was supposed to go into a dedicated drainage and street renewal fund to other purposes. As soon as we discovered that, Alan Watson and I filed suit against the city. We won in district court. We lost in the Court of Appeals. We won in the Supreme Court, went back to district court. We lost at district court, went back to the Court of Appeals. Court of Appeals agreed with the original ruling from the Supreme Court. We won the case. City tried to petition for a rehearing. The Supreme Court denied it. So we won the case. The case was an ultra-virus claim, meaning that the city, mayor, and council violated the charter. They did not follow the law, and the court said you have to follow the law. You have to put the proper amount of money into the account.
And I won't ask you to speculate on where the money went, but that meant that they were using the money for other things that clearly were not their core responsibility, right?
That's correct. Or their core obligation.
So give us a 2-minute, you've done this for me, but give us a 2-3 minute explanation on how drainage actually works, the watershed and all of that.
Well, that's a trick question. Well, the water, of course, drains from somebody's house out to the street, whether it's an open ditch or whether it's a closed conduit storm sewer, which makes its way ultimately to some lateral channel and then into the Buffalo Bayous and the White Oak Bayous, Sims Bayous in the city of Houston. So drainage is affected by how much water accumulates in the bayous and backs up, or how much water is trying to get forced through the storm sewer, the drainage system. It's like if you turn your hose on in your yard, a certain amount of water comes out. You can put a lot of pressure on it, but you can't get much more water out of the hose. And if you put 4 more lengths of hose on it, less water comes out because of the friction losses inside the pipe. So the drainage system is an accumulation of facts that start with the local drainage system, and they build up as we get to the outfall. Now, in Houston, you cannot put a big enough storm sewer line in to drain all the water. So when it rains in Houston, some water ponds in the street. And when the water ponds in the street, it's given the system time to work. The reality is rainfall in Houston is like snowfall in other parts of the country. Only difference is when it rains in Houston, you can park your car and you can wait a couple of hours, the water runs off and you can drive again. You don't have to wait for a snow plow. You don't have to wait for some other change to the infrastructure. So it's a unique system. We're very, very flat, so water accumulates and builds up. But in most places, most instances, water drains off fairly rapidly through the system, and we're protected. And we have places all through the city where there's flaws in the storm sewer, in the outfall channels, and in the biosystem that cause more flooding events than what I would say are street flooding events.
And so, what are the? I've got a minute before we go to break, and hopefully you can stay with us a little longer. What are they failing to update? What are those drainage projects that need to be done?
Well, the city has suffered simply from lack of repairs and lack of upgrading to almost the entire street and drainage system. Now, we have a lot of places in the city where the storm sewers are fine, and we just need to fix the streets. And we have some places where the streets are fine, but we don't have good drainage and drainage outfall. Because we have underfunded that, and this Renew Houston program that we started in 2010 was to put the city on an even keel, to have funds available to fix streets and drainage. That fund has been shorted.
Yeah, hold just a moment. And there was an ad during that time. They said politicians cannot divert 1 cent. That's what Anise Porker and Stephen Costello told us. Well, they sure as hell did. Bob Jones, legendary engineer, drainage and why the water rises. Coming up, the politicians can't divert a cent. Bob Jones, you filed a lawsuit against the city of Houston because they did, in fact, divert quite a few cents, correct?
That's correct.
Do you have an estimate on how much they diverted?
Well, I absolutely do. To start with, there are 3 funding components: 11.8 cents ad valorem tax, all the Metro Regional Mobility money, and a drainage fee. We filed suit on the 11.8 cents, and today that fund is being shorted about $110 million per year. When we filed the suit, it was only $50 million, but it's growing every year. They also were diverting or shorting about $40 to $45 million out of the Metro funds and about $10 million out of the drainage fee. The agreement that we have tentatively reached with Mayor Whitmire solves not only the 11.8 cent shortfall, but he's agreed to fix the rest of the program, which means restoring the full Metro money, restoring the full drainage fee money. In FY28, which will happen in July of 2027, the city will be funding $200 million more money into streets and drainage than it is doing today. Will be monumental, and it's going to be one more attempt at locking it in to prevent the diversions.
Worth noting, the Texas Supreme Court struck down in January the city's appeal of this case. So you had won the case, and now it was up to the city and this new mayor to strike a deal to do, oddly enough, what had been promised. And in fairness to Whitmire, it wasn't his promise. It was a promise 2 mayors ago, but it was a promise to the taxpayers, and the taxpayers, I would argue, have been fleeced from all of this. Bob, Jones is our guest. He's an engineer of note in this town for 54 years. You know, if somebody gets murdered on your street, you know that crime is up. You can go look at the crime data and see, oh, crime is up. Anecdotally, we know. I know streets that I used to be able to drive, and now when there is a light rain, the water is rising there. Is there a way to measure how much worse, how bad the drainage is? Is there some sort of a way you can calculate that?
Well, yeah, it could be calculated on individual drainage systems because every subdivision has a separate drainage system. Major thoroughfares have separate drainage systems, about every mile. So you can individually look at them, and you can individually solve the bad points in the various drainage systems. But first, you have to make the decision to do that, and you have to commit the money to make it happen. And so this very, very deceptive diversion of funds that really took place in the prior administration have created this horrendous shortfall. I mean, in the last 6.5 years, we underfunded what was promised to the voters by about $600 million. Going forward, under the agreement we have with Mayor Whitmire, we will add about $4.5 to $5 billion over the next 20 years to what was being done and what was the standard that the prior administration put in place.
Unfortunately, the station chose to do an EAS during much of that conversation, so I guess people didn't hear everything you said according to emails. Not that we didn't have a news break before that when it could have been done. So some of this money that we'll pay for this drainage will come from Metro.
That's correct. Some of it will come from Metro regional building money. Some will come from the drainage fee that was put in place.
Don't say the third one, Bob. All the good I've done you. You'll undercut it all. Don't say where the third one's coming.
All right.
No, you got to do it. Go ahead.
Right. The 11.8 cents of ad valorem tax revenue, which is the primary money that was being diverted, is perpetually dedicated to streets and drainage. And that is exactly what the court ruled on. It said, in reality, city's got to follow its own charter. Charter was elected, voted on by the people, and the court said, yeah, you acted in an illegal manner, and now you got to go back and follow the charter the way it's written.
So it's not a tax increase.
It is not a tax increase.
Okay, it's just a diversion of funds from where they're being spent to drainage, which was the commitment that was made originally. Okay, I'm happy to hear that. Good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well then they won't hate you now. Y'all can go back to liking him again.
Yeah, we're not proposing any additional tax at all. And in fact, the premise of this charter amendment originally was to do two things: to perpetually fund streets and drainage on a pay-as-you-go basis, which is unique in the whole United States. And the second is to separate funding for streets and drainage from police and fire. So you never had to have an argument ever again that police were being shorted because you did something on the street. We separated the funding. And going forward with what Mayor Whitmire has now agreed to, I think we'll have that working.
It's sad that it had to come to this, but I'm glad y'all were willing to go forward and bring this lawsuit and win it. You are a great man and a dear friend, Bob Jones. Thanks for sharing with us.
Thank you, Michael.
Oh, Michael Berry.